Greetings, I'm Demonac, and it's Hearthstone time. Greetings, I'm Demonac, and I'm back with part 2 of just going through the set list, or all the new cards from Journey to Ungoro expansion in Hearthstone. You can check out part 1 with the first 6 classes. I'll put a link on a card or something. But yeah, we always go the last 3 classes and then neutral, because there are a ton of neutral cards, always. So first, Shaman here, we have Air Elemental. Here's a 1-drop, 2/1. Just can't be targeted, and it's an elemental. There's not much to say about him. I mean, I will say a 2/1 for 1 is hugely better when it can't be targeted by hero powers, or would be, except that the 2 of the 3 hero powers you care about are attacks, and he can definitely be attacked by heroes. So actually, can't be targeted by spells, and you have 1 hit point, and yeah, you can't be shot by mages. That's basically it. But nevertheless, 2/1 for 1, and it's an elemental. It works with the elemental cards. It's fine. I don't expect him to be that exciting and constructed. Their quest is Unite the Murlocs. Summon 10 Murlocs. Now this is summon, not play. So that means you can get them from any source. So if you cast the Tide Fin, whatever, the 2/1 guy who summons a 1/1 as his battle cry, that counts as 2 for this quest. So, summon 10 Murlocs, that's not too hard. If you're making a Murloc deck, I guess that works. I don't know. I mean, they definitely want Murloc Shaman to be a thing. I've heard some people complaining. It's not. I don't, again, follow the meta that much, sorry. But when you summon your 10 Murlocs and you get Mega Fin, you get an 8/8 Murloc for 5 mana. That is a Mega Murloc. He has Battle Cry. Just fill your hand with random Murlocs. Just everyone get in here, basically. That's pretty solid. Again, this is not a super difficult quest to accomplish. It doesn't require really any significant weird modifications of your deck or something. You just play with a lot of Murlocs, and you should get it. And when you play this guy, he's big and refills your hand. He's fine. It's not the most exciting of the quests, but since it's not that hard to do, it's fine. Actually manipulate my screens properly here. More intentionally set up for it than last time. So we have Fire Plume Harbinger. That is a 1/1 elemental for 2, and his battle cry reduces the cost of any elementals in your hand by 1. So that's like, I can see playing a lot of elementals, especially as Shaman, because Shaman has a lot of powerful high-end elementals. And that's pretty cool. It's just, it does seem pretty inferior to, say, the Paladin guy that gives +1/+1 to all the minions in your hand. Like, you've got to have a bunch of minions in your hand. If it's even necessarily, like a 1/1 for 2 is still worthless on the board, more or less. He is an elemental, so he can trigger other stuff, but I don't know if he's actually that exciting. I could be proven wrong, but I'm not sure that he would make the cut if I was making a Shaman deck full of elementals. He does make those 1/2 elementals that some cards put in your hand. He does make them free if you had any in your hand, so hooray. But those are also 1/2 elemental guys. Who cares? Anyways, Primal Fin Totem. At the end of your turn, summon a 1/1 Murloc. It's a 0/3 for 2, and summoning Murlocs counts for the quest. That's pretty solid, right? For 2 mana, you get a 1/1 Murloc and a 0/3 that is technically not taunt, but it's gonna eat an attack. Something is gonna take out your totem. They're not gonna sit around and let you just keep spawning Murlocs. They're only 1/1s, but I mean most of the Murloc stuff should trigger off summoning Murlocs, not like having to play them from your hand. And any bonuses that affect Murlocs in play will affect that. So, yeah, it seems pretty solid. Hot Spring Guardian is a 2/4 taunt for 3. He's an elemental. That is all, reasonably solid. 2/4 taunt for 3 is an almost playable card on its own, like certainly playable in the arena. And then he also has the elemental type, so like that serves that purpose. And hey, when you play him, he restores 3 health. So this guy's actually a pretty, I don't know if strong is the right word, because it's like, this guy doesn't exactly rock my world, but he's efficient. You get a lot for that mana cost, and his stats are well arranged for a taunt guy and stuff like that. That is a solid minion, and his elementalness should help out later, I'm sure. Spirit Echo, 3 mana. Give all your minions built-in escape kodos, basically. You know, death rattle, return this to your hand. That's if you have stuff with battle cries, that could work pretty well. If you are spawning a lot, like, I don't know. See, it is giving you card advantage if you can get this on more than 2 guys, especially. If you get it on 2 guys, then it's like another form of Arcane Intellect, like spend 3 mana to gain 2 cards, although it's delayed and stuff. So I usually haven't been a huge fan of these things that just like buff all your minions in play, and yeah, I don't know if that one's actually blowing me away either. But anyway, it's there. Tidal Surge, 4 mana, deal 4 damage to a minion only, not to players. Restore 4 health to your hero. It's a really good arena card, and that's fairly solid. Like, does it have a specific place in decks? I don't know, but 4 damage for 4 isn't fantastic, and you can't burn people down with it. But 4 damage and then heal yourself for 4, it is pretty decent. Volcano is more than decent. Volcano is like, that is going to wipe the board a lot of the time. Especially since you know that, like, okay, 5 mana deals 15 damage split randomly among all minions. There is no friend or foe targeting system on this. It'll hit everything. It's 5 mana with an overload of 2. Now, unlike your other, like, board wipey spells, it's not doing equal damage to everything. And it's still super random. It's just random in a different way. But you can just, a lot of times you can just do the math. If there are only 15 hit points worth of minions in play, they're all going to die. And since you know yours are likely to get hit by this too, you can just do suicide trades with your minions until you reduce the total number of hit points on the board to 15 or less, and then Volcano. And the thing is, this compared to the other, like, compared to your Lightning Storms and your Elemental Destruction, Volcano will wipe out 1 big minion. Possibly wipe out 2 big minions. That's pretty sweet. Generally, this is just a really effective way to wipe the board clean. 5 mana up front, 2 mana overload at this stage, not as big a deal. I mean, it's not good. It will mess up your play as usual, but Volcano is a pretty strong card. Stone Sentinel. He's a 4/4 elemental for 7, and if you played an elemental last turn, he summons elemental wolves. He summons 2/3 elementals with taunt, at which point you're getting a ludicrous amount of stats, right? 7 mana is pretty slow, but he does follow up your fire elemental. Fire elemental turn 6, turn 7, you'd play this guy, and that battle cry, you have to, the played an elemental last turn battle cries, you have to set it off. So, like, it is definitely a drawback that you have to do that to make the card do its thing. It requires sort of planning ahead, or just your deck being entirely full of elementals. But it is also not that hard to do, and it will net you a lot of stats. Like, you get a 4/4, a 2/3 taunt, and another 2/3 taunt for 7 mana. That is a lot of stuff. And of course, Kalimos, Primal Lord. He's a 7/7 for 8, and if you played an elemental last turn, cast an elemental invocation. So you play him, and if you played an elemental the previous turn, which again is not that hard to do, you have to make sure you did it. But if you just play a lot of elementals, not that hard to do, then he casts 1 elemental invocation. I guess it's just random, and you get 3 damage to all minions. Sorry, 3 damage to all enemy minions. Pretty good. Fill your board with 1/1 elementals. Okay. Restore 12 health to your hero. And Invocation of Fire is just deal 6 damage to the enemy hero. They're all good effects. It's like, I think the randomness actually devalues this to the point that it is not especially good. So I'm just going to go out and say he is not a very good legendary. Okay. into Warlock, we have Lakari Sacrifice. Your quest is to discard 6 cards, and there is a lot of strong discard-based stuff in this set. Discard is going to be a serious thing. I suspect there will be lots of Warlocks playing this thing. So you've got to discard 6 cards. That is a lot of card disadvantage. But presumably you're getting good things from them, and now that there are many ways to sort of reduce the drawback of discarding, yeah, this will definitely see play. So what you get from it is a Nether Portal, which is a spell. It costs 5 mana. It opens a permanent portal, so that's going to be one of those things that takes up one of your minion slots on the board, but is itself not a minion. It's indestructible. It doesn't have stats. It doesn't attack. It just sits there and summons 2 3/2 imps every turn. You just have a portal that just craps out a pair of 3/2 imps every turn for the rest of the game. Nothing will stop it from doing so. I mean, is it the most powerful effect in the world? I don't know, but the fact that it's unstoppable, it's going to keep happening, it is sure an efficient effect, as long as you're getting good stuff out of your discards. And we'll see how they fare in the rest of the Warlock cards here. So we've got Blood Bloom. 2 mana. The next spell you cast this turn costs health instead of mana. I mean, we've already had some things that do this for special, I don't know, whatever things, and also, what's his name, legendary, I should remember because I used to play him in Hearthstone with Arestria, whatever, 2-head guy. But instead of being on a, 7 mana legendary minion or whatever, this is a 2 mana spell, so you can just spend 2 mana and X health to cast a spell that costs X mana. I don't know if you... certainly it's not a card that everyone's going to play all the time. But... And I mean, that is not an insignificant cost by any stretch of the imagination. But... it does... that is a pretty powerful thing to be able to do. So... I'm hesitant to just, discard this as not being a good card. That's pretty powerful. If you're sitting there, turn 5, your opponent's had some crazy combos go off and they've finished their quest or something, and suddenly their board is full of crazy crap, and you have, your turn comes up, now I've got 6 mana. 6 mana is not going to cast, not Nether Portal, the bigger Nether Portal, or not Nether Void, the bigger Nether Void, Twisting Nether thing, the one that's just Doom. It's called Doom. So you're sitting there and your opponent's gone off like crazy on their 5th turn. They've got all this massive stuff on the board, and you're like, I'm never going to get rid of that with 6 mana. But if you had the Blood Bloom and you had the Doom, then you could do Blood Doom and pay 10 health, which is terrible, but destroy every minion in play and then draw a card for every minion you destroyed. Okay, that's pretty good. That is a really weirdly specific scenario, though. I don't know how commonly that's going to come up to be an awesome thing. I mean, this does let you go turn 2, you Blood Bloom, Alakazam, you spend 5 health and summon a 3/3, a 2/2, and a 1/1. That's your turn 2 play. That could be your turn 1 play with a coin. So, yeah, that would be a pretty impressive move. Is that a game-winning move? Is that worth the effort of including this in your deck? I don't know. But when you look at it that way, if you use it with the right things, this could be something of a Warlock Innervate. Which, obviously being a Warlock card, hurts the hell out of you. Clutch Mother Zavas. I do like cheap legendaries. She is a cheap legendary, and she is a death machine. So, Clutch Mother Zavas, 2/2 for 2, beast. Okay, she's a beast. I don't think Warlock cares as much. Whenever you discard this from your hand, you put it back in your hand and give it +2/+2. That's right. Discarding this card not only counts as the discard as the cost of one of your other cards without discarding, but it also makes her bigger. So if you could, in the first 3 turns or so, if you could discard her twice, then for 2 mana you get a 6/6 when you feel like it. Or you could keep going longer, discard her more times, and have her come out huge. Again, every time, now, all the discards are random. So you could miss and like you discard the other cards, and you're like, no, discard her, and it just you lose something else. That's going to happen to you all the time. Although later in the game you can rig it so she's the only card left in your hand, and then you're like, oh, then I discard her, she gets bigger, and then I pay 2 mana and play her. But just the fact that she can feed your discards without losing anything, and then you also have the cutlery golems or whatever those guys are, where you discard them and they just come into play. You combine that with all the other stuff, you could get some pretty efficient. You can save a lot of the cost of your random discards potentially. Anyway, she's super strong either way. Whether the whole discard deck thing is amazing or just sort of standard good, she's amazing. Corrupting Mist. Pay 2 mana, corrupt every minion. Every minion on your board is destroyed at the start of your next turn. Corruption is a pretty crap card. You spend a card, and only 1 mana, but you spend a card to kill something after letting your opponent know that it's going to die, and then giving them a chance to use it however they want to use it, knowing that it's going to die, and possibly silence it and remove the ability that would kill it, stuff like that. When you Corrupting Mist and you're like, for 2 mana, doing that to all minions, that's not so bad. In fact, if you're a control-y Warlock deck, that is a pretty good alternative to playing minions in your first 3 turns, right? You just let your opponent like lay down some stuff for the first 3 turns, and then you Corrupting Mist them. They get to hit you an extra time. You're going to take like 6 damage or whatever, but you've spent 1 card to 3 or 4 of their cards that they spent putting out minions. And then it's like, okay, now we'll start over on turn 4. And I'll start actually playing cards. So that's pretty good in that sense. I think overall it's a pretty good card. I don't know exactly what role you would have for that. It's weird and annoying enough because it does hit your own guys. So I don't know. You could play with silent stuff to help it. Whatever. Chittering Tunneler is a 3/3 beast for 3. Battlecry, discover a spell. Deals damage to your hero equal to its cost. So it is not exactly the Ivory Knight that the Paladins get. But the Ivory Knight costs, what, like 6 for a 4/4? And then you discover a spell and heal. This, you discover a spell and take damage equal to its cost. You're still going to have to cast a spell later. But 3/3 for 3 that gives you a card and is discovering a card, that's not too bad. And a lot of the spells that are good for Warlocks are only going to be like 1 to 4 mana anyway. So it's not like a huge amount of life. So he's certainly not broken. He's not like crazy overpowered, but he seems pretty damned efficient to me. Like he would be an easy pick in the arena and pretty solid all around. Lucari Fellhounds, a 3/8 taunt for 4. Battlecry, discard 2 random cards. So he's going to come out and actually protect you. Like 3/8 taunt for 4. That is a serious taunt demon. And he's a demon. And then discard 2 random cards. That is a very harsh cost for something like that. Now, by 4th turn, if your deck is super turbo, like dump all the cards, you might only have 1 card left to discard after playing him. But also, that helps you trigger off Zavas there, or your Cutlery Golems, or your other things that benefit from discard. So that is a very strong card for the discard deck, and just not that all around for Warlock, honestly. Ravenous Terrordax. It's a 4/4 for 4. Beast again. A lot of beasts for Warlock here, but again, the expansion is Ungoro. There are just lots of beasts and elementals. Battlecry, destroy a friendly minion to adapt twice. So, assuming that your friendly minion is going to be something that is sort of crappy, like it's either a 1/1 that you got from something cheap or similar, or maybe it's a 2-cost minion that has a death rattle that you're okay with losing anyway. Or say you have another minion that you just do an attack with it such that minion barely survives, and then just eat it from this. Adapting twice, again, is worth about 5 points of stats, right? So you could get +1/+1, or +3/+0, +0/+3, or one of the 7 other actual abilities, and the abilities are very good. So at that point, like that, having to destroy a friendly minion is pretty obnoxious. It looks like you can just play this without... I'm assuming it doesn't target itself. It looks like you can just play that without that, and you just get a 4/4 for 4. So that's not good, but that's not bad as a backup plan. That is perfectly solid as a backup plan. And then if you adapt it twice, that is pretty strong. Like, you're either going to get a 5/5, like, you could, there are many possibilities, obviously, but you could easily get a 5/5 or a 7/4 or a 4/7 plus one ability, or two abilities. And some of the abilities are like Wind Fury, Divine Shield, Taunt if you need it. You know, those are very good abilities that you have to choose from. I'm gonna guess that guy sees a bunch of play. He seems like a pretty solid arena pick anyway. Feeding Time, 5 mana, deal 3 damage to a minion, summon 3 1/1 Pterodaxes. So this is a lot like a non-random implosion. Because, yeah, this is just implosion for a fixed 3 that costs more mana, but is not random, and god damn do I hate random. Like, especially when you're trying to kill a minion, because you end up having to use implosion for things that only need 2 damage to kill them a lot of the time, because otherwise 1/3 of the time you're going to get boned. This way you're always going to get your 3 guys, you're always going to get your 3 damage. So, I don't know, that seems pretty functional. I don't know how the meta works out. It's kind of based on the meta, whether that's worse or better than Implosion, but I'll take it. Although they're going to be beasts and not demons, which is less good, I guess. Tar Lurker. Tar Lurker is a 1/7 taunt for 5, but he has which, you know, that would be pretty bad, although it's only 1 mana more than the neutral. And he has +3 attack during your opponent's turn. So there are a few of these tar guys. It lets you get a minion, like a taunt, that will actually kill stuff, which is very valuable, without the offensive part, which hopefully lets them make it better for the cost. Now, this guy, I'm not totally sold. Yeah, he's like, 4/7 taunt for 5 is very, very good at taunting. But since you can only hit your opponent for 1, that seems pretty expensive. It does count as an elemental if you care. Cruel Dinomancer. He's a 5/5 for 6. Death Rattle. Summon a random minion you discarded this game. So, remember that time when you accidentally discarded your Doomguard? You're like, this is something else. It's like, no, I wanted you to discard the other cards. Well, now, you could possibly just summon back your Doomguard. And it's like, hey, he's charged. So, yeah. It's a 5/5 for 6, which is definitely on the small size. And it is a Death Rattle, so it doesn't come out right away. And it's random, so you're probably going to get a lot of crappy 1/1 guys. But I don't know. I'd definitely take him in the arena. And he could get you very good value, potentially. Actually, definitely take him in the arena. I guess it depends on how much discarding stuff I'm going to get. But on the other hand, I wonder how much you can manipulate your discarding. I don't know. Anyway, warrior cards. Fire Plume's Heart. You got to play 7 taunt minions to summon yourself, or to get into your hand Sulphurous. 7 taunt minions. 7 feels like a lot for taunt minions. Like, the Priest Quest is like 7 Death Rattle minions. The thing about Death Rattle is that's a wide variety of minions that can do all kinds of different things. When you start counting all the Priest ones, which tend to be pretty good Death Rattles, and all the neutrals. Warrior has a lot of good taunt minions, and there's some okay, like, neutral ones. But the variety and flexibility from taunt minions, to me, is a lot less. So I feel like this is much more restrictive for deck building than the Priest one, that is just like, fill your deck with Death Rattle stuff. Death Rattle stuff is mostly good. You're like, okay. But Sulphurous, when you summon it, is this. It's 3 mana for a 4/2 weapon. Like, okay, that's fine. Most of those things cost 5, though. Why is this one only 3? Like, isn't every other quest reward 5? Well, you probably want that other 2 mana for your hero power, because the battle cry when you play Sulfuras is to change your hero power to Ragnaros. Your hero power becomes deal 8 damage to a random enemy. Could be a minion, could be their hero. So that is a hell of a quest reward. So I'm going to say, like, okay, I will grant you that is a pretty good reward that maybe makes it worth the amount of somewhat excessive taunt you have to play with. Because, like, you lay that down, you can just, like, deal 12 damage. If your opponent didn't have minions, if you play this last taunt minion and you are able to, like, clean up the board, you could just do 12 damage to your opponent with that for 5 mana. Wow. And they're a pretty good selection of taunt minions now. They've made more good neutral ones, and the warrior has some pretty solid ones to go with the various cards that buff taunt minions. So they're trying. But I don't know. I like that reward, so I could see trying to mess around with that quest, even though it's a little bit of a pain in the ass. So let's see. We have Ironhide, 1 mana, just gain 5 armor. I mean, I guess that's got synergy with some cards. I'm not very excited by that myself, but, you know, 1 mana heal for 5, you don't necessarily have 5 damage yet. You can always just get this for armor, and of course you can save this in your hand and then go, like, Ironhide, and boom, so bash. And just, the problem is there aren't that many things that actually care about your armor. It's mostly just armor for armor's sake. But shield bash is obviously super good. Molten Blade. It's a 1/1 for 1, but that would be useless. So it's not actually that. It's actually shapeshifter, like Xeris, whatever his name is, for weapons. You could play it first turn and hit something for 1, but each turn it's in your hand, it changes into a new weapon. I think that's pretty good. It should eventually turn into a weapon that is appropriate for that time of the game. Like if you draw this early on, there's an okay chance it turns into a small weapon you can cast in the first 2 or 3 turns. And if you have this later in the game, actually, as I talk about this, it's just kind of actually annoying. Because there's a good chance that it won't be a cheap enough weapon for the first 2 or 3 turns. And later in the game, it might have to sit in your hand for 2 or 3 turns before it turns into something that's big enough to be worth playing when you have lots of mana. So, I don't know, that is actually weird. But as it's not a legendary card or anything, it's just rare. So, I don't know. We'll see what happens with that. It is definitely very interesting, though. Cornered Sentry. It's a 2/6 taunt for 2. Battlecry, summon 3 1/1 raptors for your opponent. It's kind of a 2/3 taunt for 2, because of course those raptors can shred her, and if something goes terribly wrong, something could go terribly wrong with raptors. On the other hand, you are a hunter, a warrior. I meant warrior. You are a warrior, so you could just play her and then play one of your various deal 1 damage to everything cards, and then she's a 2/5 taunt with no other drawback. So she seems very solid. She's got some backfire potential, but you're getting a pretty good minion out of it. Explore Ungoro is just 2 mana. Replace your deck with copies of, quote, discover a card, which I'm assuming costs 1 mana. So it's like you just replaced your deck with more expensive random cards. I'm sure some people will love it. I think it's terrible. You're a bad card. Like, you should feel bad. But anyway, moving on. Direhorn Hatchling. Now this one's pretty cool. It's a 3/6 taunt for 5. So it's just a little overpriced, but it's functional. It is a beast if you care. Death Rattle is summon a 6/9 Direhorn with taunt into your deck. Like, okay. That is a 6/9 taunt later on is pretty big, and it's not card. These things that shuffle into your deck, it's weird because it's not card advantage, right? I mean, it's helping you for exhaustion purposes, which I wouldn't think you'd have to worry about too much, although if you're a control warrior, maybe exhaustion is part of your plan, and having an extra 6/9 taunt is going to be pretty good for that. Okay, I just checked, and the 6/9 Direhorn also costs 5. So that's not too shabby at all. Like you're getting a very good big taunt for later in the game that you're setting up. This isn't so early game, but yeah, I don't know. I still think it's good. We've got Sudden Genesis, 5 mana, just summon copies of your damaged minions. So this isn't like putting them in your hand. For 1 more mana than Blood Warriors or whatever it is, this just duplicates them. So you could definitely manipulate that. This, at the very least, you should be able to get yourself 2 copied minions out of it. Probably good ones. I mean, there's a limit to how much you can get because of your board space, right? You can't gain more than 3 minions from this, because if you have 4 minions on the board, there are only going to be 3 more slots to put them in. If you only have 3 minions on your board, there are only 3 to copy. But this could still, if you had out 2 big damaged minions and then this doubles them, that is quite possibly game over right there. Especially if they're big taunts like the Direhorn Matriarch. So, I don't know. I would probably take that in the arena and see what happens, assuming I could get other big stuff. Ornery Direhorn. It's a 5/5 taunt for 6. Battlecry, adapt. So, 5/5 taunt for 6, and then you adapt is worth another 2.5 stat points-ish. So that's like a 5/7 taunt for 6. Or 7/5. I think it's good. That is a very good arena card. The adapt is flexible. Adapt cards is really based on like how decent are their stats for their cost already. This guy's already a 5/5 with taunt for 6, and then the adapt I think puts it over the top into being a good minion. He's at least as good to pick up in your hand as the 6/7 ogre, because he's gonna be like a 5/5 taunt plus some good ability. Although you could get shafted on the abilities. But anyway, Tar Lord. He's a 1/11 taunt for 7. And he gets +4 attack during your opponent's turn. So during your opponent's turn, he's a 5/11 taunt for 7. The more expensive this gets, the less good it is. Like that is not a good card. It might be an arena pick, but it is not. You should be able to get way better for 7 mana than that. Also, at 7 mana, the fact that he's an elemental, I think, becomes mostly irrelevant, because most of the elemental things, just like, did you play an elemental last turn? If it costs 7, is not about, like, playing him last turn. Then you have King Mosh. He's a 9/7 for 9. Destroy all damaged minions. So, that's 9 mana. Warriors have ways to spend 1 mana and do 1 damage to all minions. So you could play him and just wipe out all minions. So, I don't know. He's not super exciting to me, but he's definitely fairly strong. And he's going to work out under many circumstances if you're at the point when you can play a 9 mana minion. So, that's pretty solid. Okay, let's get on to neutral cards, because it makes a huge difference in what you're actually going to do with this set. And we're going to see a lot of little elementals. First off, and beasts. Emerald Hive Queen. So it's a 2/3 for 1. 2/3 beast for 1. As long as she's in play, your minions cost 2 more mana. So, I mean, you're comparing this to the zombie, right? She's not going to give your opponent 5 health. There's no lasting consequence after she dies, assuming that she dies. I think she's going to see a bunch of play. It does depend how you might have to structure your deck, and how much do you want to structure your deck against a 1-cost card that you're only going to have 2 copies of. Also, because the quests go into your hand, but still cost 1 mana, you have to think that 1-cost minions are going to be significantly devalued for any deck that's got a quest. Now, if you're going second, then you could quest and then coin out a 1-cost minion. But, yeah, wow, I do not know about that. Interesting. Emerald Reaver, 2/1 for 1. Battlecry, deal 1 damage to each hero. He's also a beast. That's crap to me. I people say, like, if your deck is to be aggressive, then, like, he's got the right stats, and he does an extra point of damage. That's crap. There's got to be a better 1-mana minion you could find out there. Firefly is weird. Is a 1/2 elemental for 1, so it's garbage stats. Although, I mean, I guess it survives mages and rogues and druids. But it's a 1/2 elemental for 1 that adds a copy of it, like a 1/2 elemental for 1 to your hand. So, obviously his purpose is not to be out there and accomplish things. His purpose is to be that elemental that you played before a guy who says, if you played an elemental last turn. I can't imagine that this guy sees a whole lot of play, but he's there to fill that role. So, hooray. I don't know. Glacial Shard. He's a much better way to fill that role. He's a 2/1 for 1. Battlecry, freeze an enemy. So that is an elemental. I think this guy's really strong, because if I'm going to put a 1-cost minion in my deck, it's either got to utterly rock the board in the first couple of turns, which you could argue, like, a 2/3 for 1 is actually a pretty good means of controlling the first couple turns of the game. Or it's got to be really useful later in the game. And this, freezing an enemy, is pretty damned useful later in the game. Stopping one attack at the right time for 1 mana. And you also get a 2/1 out of it. And it can trigger your elemental last turn stuff. So I'd say Glacial Shard is very, very good. Galactic Crawler, it's a 2/3 beast for 2. Battlecry, destroy a pirate and gain +1/+1. Is it a pirate card or an anti-pirate card? I don't know. But there you have it. 2/3 for 2 are good stats anyway, so I don't know, would you play this with pirates and just, like, I sacrifice my own men? Although, you know what? If you have What's-His-Pirate, the legendary, that's actually pretty good, because if you have several 1-cost pirates, you play a pirate, you get an extra 1/1, he charges and deals this extra 1 damage first turn, but then the next turn you could attack with him, and then eat him to get a 3/4 out of this guy. That works out pretty well, and since Pirate Legend, his effect is guaranteed. If you play a pirate, he comes into play. So you just need to have a couple other pirates to fuel this, and he's like chum for your Galactic Crawler. But anyway, Ravasaur Runt is a 2/2 beast for 2. Battlecry, if you control at least 2 other minions, adapt. Controlling 2 other minions is obviously not hard. Later in the game, you'd hope you could trigger that, although, again, at some point in the game, you're going to only be drawing 1 card per turn. So yeah. If it gets to adapt, again, that's like, I'm calling it 2.5 stat points, because you could get 3 stat points to 1 stat or the other. It could be just +1/+1, which is only 2 stat points, or one of the other 7 that are actually abilities, which, depending on the circumstances, can be worth like a ton of points. So I'm just calling it 2.5 stat points. And if you look at that, then that's like getting a 3/3 for 2, or, you know, a 2/4, 2/5, something like that for 2 mana. So it's very efficient if you can trigger it. But on the other hand, having 2 other minions on turn 2, not that likely. So really, he's a 2/2 for 2 that slightly later in the game, turn 3, turn 4, turn 5, can maybe be good enough for his cost that he's still helping the cause, instead of just clogging up your deck as a crappy 2/2 for 2. I don't know if I'm excited by him, but he's there. 2/3 for 2 for the Rockpool Hunter. He's a Murloc. That is a fair-sized Murloc. Ooh, he's a 2/3 Murloc for 2 that Battlecry, give a friendly Murloc +1/+1. Okay, that is solid. That's just immediately going in all the Murloc decks ever. Like, including in Wild. That is just one of the, I can't say he's actually one of the best Murlocs I've ever seen, because I'm sure a lot of people who play Murlocs more than I do like them more. That is my favorite Murloc that I've ever seen. Like, that's one of the first Murlocs that's ever made me think, that makes me more want to play a Murloc deck than I did before I saw this card. Because that is good. Stubborn Gastropod. It is a 2 mana, 1/2 beast, but it's taunt and poisonous. That is kind of annoying. That is like the new Annoytron. It's different, because Annoytron will eat 2 attacks, potentially, or 2 somethings. This will only eat one something. But it could eat a big something because poisonous means it kills anything it damages, any minion it damages. So with taunt, that's pretty good. If it wasn't taunt, it'd be garbage, mostly. Or at least there have been, like, it would resemble other minions that nobody plays, like the Emperor Cobra and the Pit Viper, which nobody really liked. But once you slap taunt on it, suddenly, if they only had one minion, if you can eliminate their smaller minions and leave them with just a big one, then you slap this down. Now they can't attack you unless they get rid of this or are willing to lose their big minion. So that could definitely be annoying, and if you've got beast combos, it could be effective too. Who knows? Volatile Elemental is a 1/1 for 2. Death Rattle. Deal 3 damage to a random enemy minion. So he can't miss and hit the hero, which I guess would be a drawback for some people who are super aggressive, but I don't know. That guy seems really good to me. Like, he seems like a pretty good arena pick, assuming that you have other uses for elementals. But yeah, he's likely to do 4 damage to an enemy minion. It doesn't matter what turn he has. That he just seems very good at killing minions. So I'm in favor of him. He seems good to me, even though as a 1/1 he's not going to accomplish much else. Also a pretty good death rattle to copy. Devilsaur Egg. 0/3 egg for 3. Death rattle, summon a 5/5 Devilsaur. That is a pretty serious. Apparently Devilsaurs are bigger than Nerubians. Yeah, not a big surprise there. I mean, 3 mana is a fair amount for an egg type thing, and Nerubian Egg is not in standard anymore, I'm pretty sure. Because that was like way back in... Yeah, that was a long time ago. So he adds back in all that sort of strategy you would do with the Nerubian Egg. Being more expensive makes him a little bit harder to use for certain combo-y things, but the reward you get out of it is bigger. Egg Napper is a 3/1 for 3. Death Rattle, summon 2 1/1 Raptors. So you're getting like 5/3 worth of stats for 3 mana. And the Raptors are beasts, presumably. So, I'm for some reason I'm just strongly disinterested in this card, even though it seems pretty functional. Giant Wasp. It's a 2/2 poisonous stealth beast for 3. Again, you've got to, they've gotten smarter now. That apart from making poisonous a keyword, but they're making these minions that have a reason to exist with poisonous. Being able to drop the cheap taunt with poisonous, very good. And now we have the cheap, well, it's not super cheap, but you have stealth with poisonous, which means he can sit out there and lurk and then actually kill whatever it is. Which there was the like 1/1 rogue guy, but this is neutral, it's a beast, and at 2/2 instead of 1/1, it can actually do some kind of sort of damage if you don't need him around for his poisonousness. So, yeah, that's okay. Gluttonous Ooze, it's 3/3 for 3. Battle Cry, destroy your opponent's weapon and gain armor equal to its attack. I thought they were moving away from the flat-out destroy weapons, because the last couple of things they printed were like, remove a use from your weapon. But this guy will flat-out destroy the weapon. If your opponent has a weapon, he will give you some armor. But, I mean, if it's a rogue, he's not going to give you much armor, and destroying their weapon isn't much of a setback normally. And, yeah, I don't know. He's as situational as all the other oozes. I think I'd rather have the 3/2 for 2 than have this less efficient guy who gives me armor if he happens to work out. Humongous Razor Leaf, 4/8 for 3. It can't attack. It does not have built-in taunt. Maybe this will help people to make those decks work out, the decks that, require either silencing or granting taunt to your friendly minions. Certainly, he's trying very hard to help out those decks. I don't know if that's enough to make them viable normally, but that's what he is. Igneous Elemental is a 2/3 for 2. Death Rattle, add 2 1/1 elementals to your hand. See, like, his stats for his cost are kind of bad. But at that point, the 2 1/1s, now you're getting a fair amount of junk, and also that's a lot of guys that you can use to trigger, did you play an elemental last turn, battle cries. or the rogue, like, Caverns of Crystal craft, legendary. Like, adding those those 1/2 elementals to your hand helps you get there much faster for the bizarre rogue quest of having to cast 4 minions with the same name in a game that only lets you have 2 copies of a card. Primal Fin Lookout is a 3/2 Murloc for 3 battle cry. If you control a Murloc, discover a Murloc. That's pretty good. Considering they put out the other guy who's amazing, and then now you have your Murloc, like, Gorilla Bot. Because, I mean, it's rewarding you with discovering a card. That's very good. Now, discovering a Murloc has a very low chance to give you a big, expensive Murloc that will help you late in the game. Although they're still existing. They still exist. There's a very small chance for that. I would really like to know, let me know in the comments if anyone knows, are the new quest reward minions, do they exist as minions that can be pulled out by random things like Discover? Because if you could discover Megafin without doing the quest, that would be some ludicrous RNG, and that's actually, like, not good for the game as a whole. But it's really good for this guy if there's even a small, like a 1 in 20, 1 in 25 chance that you could play this guy and have Megafin pop up as one of your choices. Actually, it'd be like 3 in 25 sort of chance. That's not even so bad. Because every time you got Megafin out of this, it would be insane. I'm assuming the quest reward things, because they're so aggressively costed, because you had to do so much to get them, and they're super powerful, I'm assuming that they can't come out from random make-a-card things, but that's my reasonable person assumption. That may not be my, like, Blizzard loves RNG assumption. Anyway, this guy, playing a Murloc deck, he seems pretty good. I don't know, maybe he slows him down too much. I don't play Murlocs a lot, but seems pretty good. Did I miss card? No, I just missed some of the pictures. I wasn't paying attention to the pictures. Duradax Hatchling. He is a 2/2 beast for 3. He just adapts with no other requirements. So again, if you call that 2.5 stats, then he's sort of like a 2/4, 2/5 for 3, or possibly a 5/2 for 3, or an ability. But like with one adapt, there's a big difference between those things that get multiple adapts, and he just gets one adaptation. Like if he's a 2/5 or a 5/2, that is all he is. He's not also coming with a Divine Shield to back it up or a Wind Fury to make it awesome. I don't think this guy's actually any good whatsoever. I think for the adapt guys to be good, usually you have to be, you have to be doing something, like they have some kind of requirement, but if you can meet that requirement effectively and reliably, they give you an actual advantage. This guy is not really giving you an advantage. Other than flexibility, but it's like random flexibility. Stonehill Defender, this guy's giving you an advantage. 1/4 taunt for 3, we know that's not good, nobody likes those ever. But his battle cry is just discover a taunt minion. Suddenly, this guy is a huge amount of taunting power for his 3 mana. That is extremely good as far as I can tell. Like, his 1/4 taunt for 3 is weak sauce, but in terms of when you draw this card, how much is it going to stop your opponent from killing you right away? The answer is a lot. Like, that is good card advantage. Discover a taunt minion is, yes, it is a limited discover, but it's limited to things that fit the theme. Here's the Terror Creeper. What I find funny is we passed by the 2 different class versions. The neutral version here is way, way better than his more expensive, not much better brothers. 1/5 taunt for 3 is not good, but it's, with a keyword, it's borderline like arena playable anyway. Just like 1/5 taunt for 3, it's cheaper than the 1/7 for 4, you know? But this guy gets +2 attack during your opponent's turn. So this is actually a 3/5 taunt for 3, except without the offense. That is so cheap and effective that he's actually just really excellent. Whereas we looked at like the Warlock one, you spend 2 more mana and he gets 2 more hit points and +1 attack only during your opponent's turn. He still only does 1 damage to your opponent. And the warrior one is even more. It's like you're paying 7 mana, and yeah, he's a lot tougher than this guy. He's got 5 attack during your opponent's turn, but I mean, he still only hits for 1. I would just, efficiency-wise, I would much, much rather get the Tar Creeper. Like, he's good. Those two guys seem bad. Even though they're class minions, they should have more stats. Like, I don't know why they didn't just... Like, especially the warrior one. For 7 friggin' mana, he should have an attack of 2, like a printed attack of 2. And then get, like, the +4, or maybe reduce it, maybe take it out of that to get +3 attack during your opponent's turn. But just having 2 attack would make him so much less terrible during your own turn. You pay 7 mana for a minion that can only attack for 1. He's not good enough. This guy is very solid. I'd arena pick him like crazy. And if I was playing an elemental themed deck, I would probably almost certainly... He would be a strong consideration to include. Thunder Lizard! He's a 3/3 beast for 3. Battlecry, if you played an elemental last turn, it begins, eh? If you played an elemental last turn, adapt. See, that is so much better than this piece of crap. Okay? This guy, no requirement, but he's just not going to work out well. Whereas this guy at 3/3 for 3, he is just like 3/3 with a keyword for 3. He is just almost there as being functional. He just needs like 1 more stat point to be like, can't complain. Well, if you can't trigger his condition, okay, he's just a 3/3 for 3. That's not good. But if you do, then you're going to get, he's just like going to be efficient. You can, at 3/3, he's big enough that Wind Fury, just if you choose Wind Fury, that might be worthwhile. He's cheap enough that Poisonous might still be worthwhile to kill some big thing if that's what you have to deal with. If you give him Taunt, that's not terrible. If you give him Divine Shield, then he's coming in cheaper than that dumbass 3/3 Divine Shield guy for 3. Like, I think he works out pretty well, although you have to be playing with a whole bunch of cheap elementals. This guy still just kind of sucks. Vicious Fledgling. He's a 3/3 beast for 3. After he attacks a hero, adapt. So this guy is right up there. He is the new Worgen, like the Worgen Berserker, whatever that guy's called. Raging. I don't even remember what he's called. He's called the 3/3 that always dies. Like, there's him. There's the 3/3 that had like the Wyvern Rider or whatever that guy was, where he had like Inspire Divine Fury. This is one of those guys where he's a 3/3 for 3 that your opponent is going to kill with mad priority, because if he hits your opponent more than once, the amount of value you're getting out of him is going to be insane. And he can do stuff like, he could trade, like, okay, if he's hitting a minion, he's not getting the adapt. So you really have to prioritize hitting your opponent. But you hit them once, he could get +3 attack or +3 hit points, which would make him very solid. He could get a Divine Shield, which would make him hard to kill. If he got Wind Fury, now he could hit your opponent twice a turn and double adapt and just go insane. So, yeah. He's like the Reporter. He's one of those things your opponent has to kill when he comes down. Again, I'm not sure how great some of those things are, because they usually do just get killed. And is it better to have a 3/3 that your opponent had to kill and then does, as opposed to having a 3/4 that they had to spend more effort to kill, maybe they couldn't kill? Anyway, Bright-Eyed Scout, 4 mana for a 3/4 Battlecry, draw a card, and change that card's cost to 5. That is some weird, like, it is giving you a card for free. So, okay, 3/4 for 4 that gives you a card. That is going to be worthwhile. Now, if you have normal deck, that might give you a card that costs less than 5 and make it cost 5, which is kind of ass, but it's still a card that you drew for free, so normally that's still going to work out okay. If your deck is loaded with expensive cards, suddenly you could get insane value out of this. And of course, it's like right on curve, right? If you play her turn 4, then whatever you draw, you can play at turn 5, even if it happens to be like an 8/8 or something. So she's very interesting. There are a few cards in here to encourage you playing huge, expensive decks, and there were already some cards to encourage that in the Cthulhu expansion and stuff, so we'll see. Fireplume Phoenix is a 3/3 for 4, elemental, battlecry, deal 2 damage. This is so much better than the Super Rifleman dumbass. 5 mana for a 4/2 with that ability? Crap. 4 mana for a 3/3, which is, effectively about the same, is effectively the same stats as a 4/2. Really. Might as well be the same. But it costs 1 less mana, and it's an elemental for the hell of it. This is just way, way better than the expensive Rifleman guy. I would choose this in the arena. Probably often. Gentle Megasaur is a 5/4 for 4 beast. Hey, that's that's already, nice, curvy stats. His Battlecry, adapt all your Murlocs. I've already heard in comments, it sounds like these type of things, you choose one adaptation and it just applies to all of them. That's fine. I just wanted to know how it works. Hard to argue which way is better or worse and stuff. But that sounds like that's how it works. You choose one adaptation and give it to all your Murlocs. This thing with Murlocs is like, now suddenly I'm looking at Murlocs as maybe a good deck to play. It may or may not end up being with Shaman, even though they have the quest, because the quest was like, It wasn't hard, but it wasn't the ultimate power in the universe. But certainly, the 2 Murlocs we've seen here, the 2/3 that gives +1/+1 to a Murloc, the 3/2 that lets you discover a Murloc as long as you had one out, and now this, which is it's not a Murloc, but it is a perfectly good big creature for the cost. And if you have 1 or 2 Murlocs out and you're just adding, again, I'm going to call it 2.5 points worth of stats to those Murlocs, somewhat adapted to your situation, that sounds really strong. So that guy's a powerhouse. Spirit Singer Umbra is one of your neutral legendaries. He's a 3/4 for 4. Whenever you play a minion with Death Rattle, that Death Rattle goes off right away. So all your Death Rattle minions now have Battlecry, see Death Rattle. And they also have Death Rattle. That's craziness. Yes, technically it's not a Battlecry. It probably doesn't trigger things that say they trigger off Battlecry. There aren't that many of those anyway. But when you play a Loot Hoarder and immediately draw a card, and then if it dies, you draw another card, that's power. This guy, not going to survive very long. But he costs 4 mana, so as a later game play, you could definitely play him and then immediately play a Death Rattle minion, get some value out of it, and then your opponent has to kill him or things will go bad for them. So he's pretty cool. Stegodon, it's a 2/6 taunt for 4. It's a beast. That's perfectly solid, arena style. It's like, I would rather play with the Tar Creeper here. Tar Creeper is pretty sweet. But, Stegodon also perfectly, though that is a good arrangement of stats for a taunt guy. If you're going to pay 4 mana for a taunt, his stats are 2/6. Having 2 attack instead of 1 means he can kill things, means that when things run into him, it hurts. So that's good. And then 6 hit points will stand up to a fair amount of punishment. So he does what you want him to do. The Vorax is a 3/3 legendary, costs 4. After you cast a spell on him, summon a 1/1 plant, and copy that spell onto it. I mean, he's going to go in any decks that are using that Paladin quest, whether or not any decks actually use the Paladin quest. Like, if you can cast buffs on this guy, the value you will get will be tremendous. Like, if you cast the Paladin spell, for 10 mana, you could play the Vorax. You could play the Paladin spell that adds a Stegodon to your minion. So he would now be a 5. He would have +2/+6 in taunt, and then when he died, he would give you a 2/6 taunt. But he's also making a 1/1 plant with +2/+6 in taunt, and when it dies, it will give you a 2/6 taunt, and like, it gets ludicrous very fast. Again, he's very sort of combo-y, likely to die right away. Although, if whatever spell you're casting on him makes him harder to kill, then it might work out okay for you. So he's pretty cool. Tolvir's Stormshaper is a 3/5 for 4 battlecry. If you played an elemental last turn, taunt and divine shield on this guy. So again, that played an elemental last turn condition, if you build your deck for it, not that hard to meet. And this guy is a 3/5 taunt with divine shield for 4. That is good value. So probably see him get played a bunch. Bittertide Hydra is an 8/8 for only 5. But whenever he takes damage, he deals 3 damage to your hero. Now that's really interesting because it is both better, it is situationally better or worse than that dumbass demon that was like 4/3 for 2, and whenever he takes X damage, he deals X damage to you. That sucks. Now this guy, you could nickel and dime him and actually end up doing more damage to your hero, right? If you hit him with a bunch of 1/1s. But often he might only do 3 or 6 damage to you in exchange for having an 8/8 for 5. Like, that's Fel Reaver strong, but I feel like this will, like, crush you a lot less than the Fel Reaver eating your deck. And, yeah, Beasts are solid. There's stuff that works off Beasts. I feel like he's going to see a hell of a lot more play than Fel Reaver ever did. This guy seems pretty functional. Like, he may even get okay value. And, I mean, you could do stuff, like, first off, it is just damage. You could potentially heal it. But there's also stuff like, there's that Druid buff, right? 1 mana, just give minion +1/+1, and then gain armor equal to its attack. Well, now you're up to 6 mana, but you also gained 9 armor. That pays for the next 3 times he's damaged. So, that's pretty good. Elise the Trailblazer. We have a variant version of Elise. You can play with both. Nobody cares. 5/5 for 5. So, I don't know, stats are on par, not on the good side of par. Battlecry, shuffle a sealed Ungoro pack into your deck. So, you're not gaining the cards permanently. But you're just going to get 5 random Ungoro cards added to your deck, with one of them having to be rare or better. That's weird. If you're worried about exhaustion, then I guess that works. I don't know. Nesting Rock, 4/7 Beast for 5. Battlecry, if you control at least 2 other minions, gain taunt. Okay. 4/7 taunt for 5 is pretty good. The condition's not hard. Seems overall just not very exciting to me. But, I don't know. Might make its way into warrior decks because they need more taunts. There are lots of choices of taunts in here. I feel like that's not the one I would choose, but there's nothing wrong with it. Servant of Kalamos is a 4/5 elemental for 5. Battlecry, if you played an elemental last turn, discover an elemental. So he's Gorilla Bot for elementals. I mean, he works slightly differently, because it's not if you control one, if you played one last turn. But that's actually much easier to meet than if you control one, because even if you played one last turn and then it died, this guy would still trigger. Discover an Elemental is pretty damn flexible. So that, I don't know, this guy seems pretty powerful to me. I think you'll see a lot of play. Frozen Crusher is an 8/8 elemental for 6, but every time he attacks, he gets frozen, which means he's going to miss, he won't be able to attack on your next turn. This is like a weird dude. I mean, you could silence him, although that becomes a lot of effort for an 8/8 for 6. I mean, 8/8 for 6 is still quite big and wins a lot, but and you don't have to silence him right away. You could do it as a surprise, right? Because you play him, and then after the first time he attacks, then he gets frozen. If then you silence him, your opponent might not have expected it, and you might get a free attack out of him, like they might have left him alone for a while. I mean, if you play this and then your opponent just blows him up right away, then they spent the same effort to kill a normal 8/8 on your guy that had a drawback. But yeah, I'm not sure how good he is or bad or whatever. He is probably just okay. I mean, you have to have something to deal with that though, because the actual just like attacking every second turn is kind of crap unless you give him taunt. Anyway, Hemet, Jungle Hunter. He is a 6/6 for 6. Battle Cry. Destroy all cards in your deck that cost 3 or less. So this guy is one of those interesting guys that's going to cause decks to be built around him, because hold on a second, you're like, in a normal deck, this would thin your deck and get rid of all the early game cards, so you don't draw them later in the game. Because once you had 6 mana, you don't want to draw that 1/1 for 1 anymore, right? So that's a reasonable use of him. Although you might have important spells that cost less than 3 or less mana as well. I mean, he would also, yeah. Well, I mean that's what he does. But I mean that is hurting you a lot for fatigue. But if you have enough cards left in your deck that are fat, you will get down to those cards very quickly. Yeah, I don't know. I felt like I had more to say about him, but that's kind of what he does. It is very, very interesting, but I don't know what more to say about it. You have Saber-Tooth Stalker. It is an 8/2 stealth for 6. I'm not a big fan. Because you can get a 7/5 stealth for 7. He only deals 1 less damage than this guy. Is tougher. I guess he's no keyword, and he costs 7. This guy is a beast, and he costs 6. But I mean, at 2 hit points, it is not. 2 hit points is sort of the threshold where it's not hard to necessarily, like, it's relatively easy to kill him with any area damage thing, like Consecrate or whatever. I mean, he does do 1 swing for almost a third of your opponent's starting health. So when he hits, but yeah, I don't know. Not a huge fan, even though he will trade and kill something. But I'd kind of rather have, for the same cost, you get a 5/5 stealth. It can kill a minion and you survive, but this will kill your opponent much faster. So I can see an argument there. I don't like him as my gut, but that doesn't mean I'm right. Blaze Caller is a 6/6 elemental for 7. If you played an elemental last turn, deal 5 damage. Okay, that's pretty strong. That is pretty strong. Obviously, if you played a fire elemental, you got a 6/5 for 6 and did 3 damage. And then next turn, you play a 6/6 and deal 5 damage. That is a lot of damage. But either way you look at it, this guy is strong, and with the various elemental support, it shouldn't be hard to get him working at all. Sated Threshodon is weird. It is a 5/7 for 7, and when it dies, it summons 3 1/1 Murlocs that were in its stomach. And now they're not. But they're still on your side. We're not sure why. I mean, technically that's like 8, 10 worth of stats for 7. It is not arranged in a very good way. It is sort of a big death rattle, but not big enough that you care about the ability to copy it when it costs that much to get down on the table. He's just kind of funny. I don't think he's that exciting to me. Stormwatcher is a 4/8 Wind Fury for 7. So he costs 1 more than the Harpy, has 2 extra hit points, and is an elemental. I don't know. The thing is, he has 3 extra hit points. The Harpy's only a 4/5, right? Yeah. I feel like he's better than the Harpy, even though normally going more expensive for just a couple extra hit points is not great. With Wind Fury, there's a tremendous difference in how much he can kill and survive to keep hitting your opponent, relative to the Harpy, which can hardly kill anything and continue attacking your opponent. I can't remember if it's a 4/5 or 4/6, I don't care. But I feel like I like him better, even though normal just straight off the books, looking at the numbers, he seems like he would not be better. Volcanosaur, or the Golden Monday everyone probably got when they logged into the game. 5/6, a beast for 7 that adapts twice. Now, one thing is, adapting twice is way, way better than adapting once. Because if there's a specific ability you're hunting for, you are vastly more likely to get it out of the 10 different abilities that are there. It also means that you have a better chance of getting some kind of stats and one ability of your choice. So I don't know. I just feel like the anything that adapts twice you're getting, like, the cushion against the randomness, it really makes it better than, like, the sum of its parts sort of thing. It's like, it's worth more than you'd think that adapting once a second time would be. That's how I feel like. I could be way off, but anyway. You look at that, though, again, I'm calling that 2.5 stats worth, so call it 7.5, 8.5 for 7. And there's some, that seems like, he seems very solid. He seems like a very effective 7 mana neutral, just, I'm a big creature. Considering the flexibility you have, the ability, like at 5/6, just giving him Wind Fury could make him very dangerous. But you're giving him that and some other effect, or whatever things you come out. Poisonous is going to be pretty useless when you're that big, but otherwise. Charged Devilsaur is a 7/7 charge for 8. With his battle cry, he can't attack heroes the turn his battle cry triggers. So that's a pretty interesting way to give you a big charge minion without him being a spontaneous kill method. That allows him to be a big charge for the price that can remove a threat, which is good and cool, and he's still big after that first turn. But he doesn't lose the ability to attack heroes like that dumbass giant Yeti, but he doesn't have the ridiculous player-killing power of a normal 7/7 charge. So, I don't know, it seems like a well-balanced card. He seems like a good pick in the arena. I don't know how much normal constructed play he'd get. Primordial Drake is a 4/8 taunt for 8. Battle Cry, deal 2 damage to all other minions. This guy is really doing a lot to try and keep you alive. That is a lot of mana to pay for a 2 damage AoE, but he's a dragon. Your Discover Dragon stuff could get him, so that's really good. His 4/8 tauntness is a lot of protection. Not a lot for 8 mana, but the effects combined seems pretty reasonable and solid. I mean, any minion on the board, he is going to do 6 damage to them before they get to you, right? If they have to attack, if they take 2 damage when he's played, and then they have to get through him. I don't know. I'm not sure exactly what purpose he fills, but he is an interesting and seems like a fairly effective card. Tortolan Primalist. He is only a 5/4 for 8, so his ability better be awesome. His ability is discover a spell and cast it with random targets. That is a whole lot of weirdness going on. So, the spell is going to be cast for free with random targets. But you get to discover which spell it is. So you can choose the form of the Destructor. You know, does he, and it means that depending on your choice of spell, random targets may not be a disadvantage. If you discover a Flame Strike and then cast it for free right away, it doesn't matter if the targets are random because it just hits all the things you want it to hit and none of the things you don't want it to hit. It's still going to kill all your opponent's minions. And there are a lot of spells that don't have targets. So, depending on what you pick, it may remove the drawback of that. The problem is just, yes, he is casting the spell for free, but he cost 8. Like, he's a problem solver, but he's a very expensive problem solver. And the random target thing does turn me off. But, again, you can avoid that random target disadvantage a lot of the time, but it does eat into, if you're choosing to try and avoid that, that's eating into the flexibility that you played him for as a problem solver. Giant Mastodon is a 6/10 taunt for 9. Okay. He's a hell of a lot better than the 6/10 nothing for 8. Osrook is a 5/5 taunt for 9, but wait, he gets plus 5 health for each elemental you played the previous turn. It does say played, so not summoned. So he's only counting ones you played from your hand. But the idea, I guess, is that you spend the game sort of building up a bunch of those 1/2s in your hand, or something like that you can get from various cards, or just you have, multiple cheap elementals in your deck. If you could play 3 elementals in a previous turn, he's going to be a 5/20 taunt. But, I don't know. Like, if you only played 1 elemental last turn, he's a 5/10 taunt for 9, which is kind of terrible. Okay, it's not terrible, but it's, like, not good, nowhere near good enough to warrant his being a 9-cost legendary. Put it that way. And even, like, 5/15 taunt for 9, even for 9, 5/15 is a hell of a powerful taunt. If he's not getting assassinated or similar, he will stop a lot of stuff, but I don't know. Does not seem good. Will probably be the only legendary I get in all my packs. And the Ultrasaur! He's a 7/14 for 10. He's a beast. He's a hell of a lot better than the 10/10 no keywords for 10. I would much rather have a 7/14. It is both more stats and better distributed than the 10/10, even though he doesn't quite kill your opponent as much. Like, if you're in the arena, if you're picking a big fat ass minion in the arena for 10, and you're going to take a 10 drop, you'd much rather have him than the 10/10 Whispers guy. So that is the Journey to Ungoro Valley. There's going to be a lot of interesting stuff. I don't know I don't keep track of exactly what's rotating out, so I can't say if it's really a bonus to Murloc decks, but I will say that the things they added to help Murlocs, I like these ones a lot better than the previous things they've added to help Murlocs. I'm much more inclined to try this time around. More importantly, elementals, there are a lot of strong elementals, and I think we're going to see a lot of those, and the quests are really going to shake up the game. It'd be interesting to see what percentage of decks are using quests. It's going to depend heavily on which class you're playing, because the priest quest seems like almost a no-brainer. Like, I would guess a high percentage. Well, I mean, I guess it's a legendary card, it's not that easy to get. If everyone had the card, I would guess that 30% or more of priest decks would probably play that quest. Whereas some of the other ones, like the Paladin quest, you're having to work your ass off for that, and what it's giving you is a big-ass minion that doesn't, change the way the game is played, like some of the other quest rewards. I don't know that, if everyone had access to the Paladin quest, I feel like a much lower percentage would play it. Maybe less than 10% of decks. But what do I know? I don't know. It'll be interesting to see this stuff in the arena, though, next time.
If you found that useful or entertaining, or if you enjoy cookies, hit the like button. And check out Tales from My D&D Campaign on youtube.com/Demonac.